Welcome back to She Will Empower. I'm your host, Jessica Cherry. I'm a strategic intervention and empowerment coach, an NLP practitioner, a networking and empowerment community director, a certified sound bath practitioner, social media and marketing gal, and your Tuesday morning wake up club host on 94.3 KWVH Wimberley Valley Radio, where we bring real talk, real tools, and real empowerment straight to the airwaves. And if this is your first time here, welcome. Thank you for spending part of your day with me. And if you're listening on the podcast replay, welcome to the space where we talk about mindset, growth, psychology, and the real life decisions that shape who we become. This show is for people who are trying to do better in life, the ones building businesses and careers, the ones raising kids, the ones caring for aging parents, the ones reinventing themselves. And today, we're talking about something that every single human being experiences every day that very few people ever stop to examine. That is the conversation happening inside of your own head. Because here's a question. If someone followed you around all day long saying the exact things you said to yourself, would you keep them in your life? Would you give them a high five and pat on the back? Or would you eventually ask them to stop all that negative self-talk? Think about that. Because for many of us, the harshest critic we've ever known lives inside our own head. And maybe you've caught yourself saying things like, "Oh, I'm so dumb. I could never figure this out." Or "I'm always messing everything up. I'm too old. I'm too late. I'm not attractive enough. I'm not successful enough. I'll never be as good as them. People probably think I'm annoying. I can't get anything right." Anything like that. Now, here's what people don't realize. Your brain doesn't simply hear those words. It responds to them. Your nervous system responds. Your hormones respond. Your beliefs respond. Your body responds. And eventually, your life begins responding. Your brain is always listening. And today, we're going to explore why those words you repeatedly tell yourself become the blueprint your subconscious mind follows. Because negative self-talk isn't just bad for your confidence. It is changing your brain. It's shaping your biology, and it's quietly determining the quality of your future. So I want to talk to you about the story that changed everything. I want to talk to you about something. Imagine there's a little girl, right? She's about 7 years old. She raises her hand in class and she gives an answer, and it's wrong, right? Some kids laugh and the teacher gently corrects her. It seems like a really tiny moment, right? Nothing major, except her brain doesn't record facts. It records emotion. And that tiny moment becomes, "I am so embarrassed. I am not smart. I shouldn't be speaking up," right? And years later, she's 35 and someone asks for volunteers during a meeting and she stays quiet. Not because she lacks ideas, because somewhere deep inside, that 7-year-old still whispers, "Don't embarrass yourself," right? Most adults believe they're making logical decisions, but neuroscience tells us something different. We're often making emotional decisions based on stories our brains learned decades ago. And that is just fascinating. And unless we intentionally rewrite those stories, we'll continue living from them. See, one of the most fascinating discoveries in neuroscience is this: your brain is incredibly different. It wants to save energy. So instead of analyzing every thought from scratch, it creates shortcuts. And these shortcuts are called neural pathways. So imagine, for example, walking into a forest for the first time ever, right? There's no trail. So you push the branches away, you step over rocks. It's so difficult. Now imagine walking that same path every single day. Eventually, a trail appears, right? And we walk enough, it becomes a road. And that's exactly how your thoughts work. Every single thought is taking another step, and every repeated belief strengthens that pathway. And every repeated sentence becomes easier to think about tomorrow, easier the next day, then automatic, and eventually you're not consciously continuing the thought anymore. The thought is choosing you. Isn't that crazy? But it's so true. So your brain doesn't know that you're joking. Have you ever noticed how casually people insult themselves? Because I have. And oh my God, it's my pet peeve. They can say things like, oh, I'm so dumb. I'm a disaster. Or I'm terrible with money. I have the worst luck. I can't remember anything. And people laugh and everyone moves on, right? Except your subconscious doesn't. And here's something fascinating. The subconscious mind processes language very literally. It doesn't have the same filter as your conscious mind has. So when you repeatedly say, I'm terrible with money, your brain begins looking for evidence. And when you say, I always fail, your reticular activating system, so the part of your brain responsible for filtering information, highlights. It starts highlighting failures. Not because there's one happening more often, but because your brain has been instructed to notice them. So your brain is like your own personal Google. So whatever you type into the search bar, that's what it searches for. And every morning, your search query is, why am I not enough? Guess what your brain finds? Evidence, and lots of it. See, psychologists call this confirmation bias. It's one of the strongest mental forces we possess. We naturally notice information that confirms what we already believe. So if you believe that people don't like you, your brain notices that one person that didn't smile and it ignores the 25 that did. And if you believe you're unattractive, you will always notice every wrinkle and every blemish and every pound, but overlook every compliment, every smile, every moment someone looked at you with admiration. See, the brain isn't interested in the truth. It's interested in consistency. It wants your external world to match your internal beliefs. And you see, your body is listening too. Here's where the things become even more fascinating. Negative self talk isn't just psychological, it's also biology. See, when your brain perceives criticism, even if it's coming from your own self, your body begins preparing for danger. The amygdala, so your brain's alarm system, doesn't always distinguish between an external threat and an internal one. Think about that. If someone walked into your office every morning and screamed, "You're gonna fail today," right? Your heart rate would increase, your stress hormones would rise, your muscles would tighten, and now you ask yourself, how different is that from saying it to yourself? Your body is going to respond either way, right? Which means every negative thought has a physical consequence, right? It's, to a point at least. This is why chronic negative thinking is associated with elevated cortisol, increased stress, poor sleep, reduced immune function, and greater emotional exhaustion. See, your inner dialogue isn't just in your head, it's happening throughout your entire body, which is insane, but it's the way the body works. Let's go deeper. Imagine someone who repeatedly says, I'm bad at relationships, right? Every disagreement becomes proof. Every breakup becomes proof. Every misunderstanding becomes proof. And eventually, they stopped expecting healthy love. Not because it doesn't exist, but because it doesn't fit their identity. See, identity is powerful because people don't simply behave according to goals. They behave according to who they believe they are. And that's why someone can desperately, so desperately want success and yet unconsciously sabotage opportunities. Why? Because success conflicts with identity. Your subconscious will always, almost always choose familiarity over possibility. even when familiarity hurts. That's crazy. That's just crazy. So I want to tell you, I am a strategic intervention and empowerment coach, and I'm under that through Tony Robbins. And Tony Robbins often says that the quality of your life is determined by the quality of the questions you ask yourself. Think about your internal questions. Why does this always happen to me? Why am I never enough? Why can't I get ahead? Those questions force your brain to produce answers. So instead, imagine thinking, what's one thing I learned today? Or where have I grown? Or what's working in my life? How am I stronger than what I was last year, right? Notice how different those questions feel. Different questions create different focus, and different focus creates different emotions. And different emotions create different behaviors, and different behaviors create a different life. So I want to say this. Here's some homework for you. For the next 24 hours, become a scientist. Don't judge yourself. Don't fix anything yet. Simply observe. Carry a notebook or or even on the notes app on your phone. And every single time you catch yourself saying something negative about yourself, I want you to write it down exactly as it appears. No editing, no filtering, just awareness, because awareness always comes before transformation. You cannot change a conversation if you don't realize you're having it, right? Your brain is always listening. And every sentence you repeat to yourself is literally strengthening your neural pathways in your brain. But today, we're going to ask an even more powerful question. If your brain is listening, who has it been listening to for all of these years? Right? That's an important one, because here's the truth. Many of the thoughts you think every single day didn't originate with you. They were handed to you. They were molded for you. They were spoken over you, right? They were repeated around you until they eventually became your own inner voice. And somewhere along the way, you stopped questioning whether those thoughts were actually true. So close your eyes for just a moment, unless you're driving, right? And picture yourself as a 6-year-old. You're standing in your childhood home. Maybe you're at school. Maybe you're sitting at the dinner table, or maybe you're trying something new. And I want you to ask yourself, who was talking? Was it a parent, a teacher, a coach, a sibling, a grandparent, someone who meant well? Or was it carrying pain they didn't know they needed to heal, right? Children are incredible observers. Long before they understand logic, they absorb emotion, they absorb tone, they absorb energy, and they absorb facial expressions. They absorb repeated messages. So psychologists estimate by the time someone is 7, much of our subconscious programming is already established. Not because our personality is fixed, but because our brains are what's in called theta brainwave states. So this is highly suggestive state where children learn rapidly by observation rather than critical thinking. So imagine your subconscious as wet cement, for example. Every repeated experience leaves an imprint, and every emotional experience creates another groove. Eventually, the cement hardens. Not permanently, but enough that those grooves become familiar, right? Think about some of the phrases you may have heard growing up. Money doesn't grow on trees. Don't get too big for your britches, right? Pretty girls aren't smart. Boys don't cry. Nice girls don't make people uncomfortable. You'll never amount to anything. Life is hard. People always leave. You have to struggle with to succeed. We're just not lucky. Maybe no one ever said those exact words. Maybe the lesson wasn't spoken. Maybe it was demonstrated. Or maybe only love came after the achievement, right? These are common things that kids go through. And maybe mistakes were met with criticism instead of curiosity, or emotions weren't ignored, or maybe conflict meant silence. Maybe success created jealousy. See, children don't analyze these moments, they personalize them. So instead of thinking, my parents are stressed, a child thinks, I must be the problem. And instead of, my mom is emotionally unavailable, a child thinks, I'm not important. And instead of, dad struggles with expressing affection, a child concludes, I'm difficult to love. So children don't have enough life experience to understand adult complexity. So maybe they make themselves the explanation. So I want to talk about a limiting belief that is formed. So we're talking about kids here, right? Because we all have our inner child. So imagine an 8-year-old who gives a presentation in class. She stumbles over a few words, a few classmates laugh, her cheeks turn red, heart races, brain releases stress hormones. Now imagine she tells herself, I'm bad at speaking, right? That thought gets repeated. Middle school comes, she avoids presentations. High school comes, she avoids leadership. And college comes and she avoids networking. And now she's 35. She just naturally says, I'm just shy. She isn't naturally shy. She's practiced avoidance for nearly 3 decades, right? The belief came first, the behavior followed. And eventually the behavior became identity. So, one of the primary jobs of the brain is prediction. Your brain is constantly asking what happens next. So, if your subconscious believes rejection is coming, it prepares for rejection. If it believes failure is inevitable, it prepares for failure. Not because it's trying to sabotage you, but because it's trying to protect you. Your brain values certainty more than happiness. Think about that. Your subconscious world would rather experience a familiar disappointment than unfamiliar success. And why? It's because familiar feels safe, even when familiar hurts. And that's why people often recreate similar relationships, similar jobs, similar financial situations, similar emotional patterns until they become aware of what's driving them. So your brain burns a tremendous amount of energy every single day, right? So it creates shortcuts. Think of them as mental filing cabinets. Every experience gets filed away, and eventually, when something happens, your brain doesn't ask, what's actually happening here? It asks, what does this remind me of? And that's why two people can experience the exact same situation and have completely different emotional reactions. One person receives constructive feedback and thinks, great, thank you so much. I can improve on that, right? I can improve. Thank you so much for letting me know. And another one hears the exact same feedback and thinks, I'm a failure. I'm no good, right? The event wasn't different. The filing cabinet was. See, have you ever wondered why you can barely remember what you had for lunch like 2 weeks ago on a Tuesday, but you vividly remember being embarrassed when you were like 10, right? Emotion strengthens memory. The amygdala communicates when the hippocampus essentially is telling your brain, this matters. Store this, remember this, protect against this happening ever again, right? It's an incredible survival mechanism. But here's the problem. Your brain stores emotional experiences, not necessarily accurate conclusions. So if one relationship ends painfully, your brain may store people leave, right? Instead of that relationship wasn't healthy. One conclusion empowers you, the other imprisons you. So I'm also a big fan of Dr. Joe Dispenza, and he often explains that the brain records the past so efficiently that many people wake up each morning expecting yesterday to repeat itself. And I am so guilty of this, especially during the week. I call it, rinse, wash, repeat. So think of your morning routine, right? Before you even touch the floor, before your feet even touch the floor, what thoughts arrive? I have so much to do. I'm already behind. I'm exhausted. Today's going to be stressful, right? I'm guilty of that myself. I've thought of that myself. Your body begins releasing chemicals that match those thoughts. So before anything has even happened, your feet haven't even touched the floor yet. Your body starts living in the future, right? As though it already knows how the day ends. So, what if instead you interrupted that pattern? What if the first thought became, today I get another opportunity? I'm so lucky. My past doesn't get to make today's decisions. I can create a totally different experience. What if every problem would disappear? Would it? Of course not, right? But your brain would begin searching for different evidence. See, remember, your reticular activating system looks for whatever you repeatedly tell it, right? And that matters. And that's great. So, I'm a neurolinguistic programming practitioner. So that's basically how you talk to yourself, right? And language isn't just descriptive, it's instructive. I want you to notice the difference between these statements. I am so anxious versus I'm experiencing anxiety, right? Or I am broken versus I am healing. Or I am such a procrastinator versus I've developed a habit of procrastinating. See, one sentence defines identity and the other defines behavior, and behavior can change. Identity feels permanent, right? So, whenever possible, separate yourself from the behavior because you are not your worst habit. You are not your biggest mistake. You are not your darkest season. Those were experiences, not definitions. So you're not obligated to spend the rest of your life believing thoughts that were introduced to you before you were even old enough to question them. Some of those thoughts served as protection, yes. And some were borrowed from people doing the best they could at the time, yes. And some were born from painful experiences, yes. But none of them have to dictate your future. Seriously. But it's good to be aware of them because awareness is powerful, but transformation happens through practice, right? So we're going to start practicing and noticing how we talk to ourselves because it's really, really important. It defines so much in our life more than what we think it does. The voice in your head becomes the leader of your life. So make sure it's speaking words worthy of the person that you are and the person that you want to become. I want to give you a reflection exercise. So before we end today, I want you to ask yourself 3 questions. Write them down. Don't rush through them. Sit with them. All right. So question 1 is going to be, what negative sentence do I repeat most often? And you don't have to tell anybody, but just say it to yourself and write it down. What negative sentence do I repeat most often? Not occasionally, most often, right? What's the soundtrack? What does it sound like? All right, that's question 1. Question 2 is, who do I first hear something like this from? Maybe it wasn't exact words, maybe it was behavior, maybe it was culture, maybe it was school, social media. Where did it begin, right? So the question 2 was, who did I first hear something like this from, right? So think of the source. And question 3 is, if I had never learned this belief, would I naturally think it today, right? That question changes everything because once you realize a belief was learned, you can also realize that it can be unlearned. And that is life changing. And it sounds cheesy, but it's literally life changing. If there's a belief that you truly see, this was never mine to begin with. This was just talked down to me or talked upon me. You can change it. You don't have to believe it, right? You're not, and the beauty of that is you're not obligated to spend the rest of your life believing thoughts that were introduced to you before you were even old enough. And that's wonderful. We can always change who we are, and our tomorrow doesn't have to be our today, right? And that's great. So I hope that these words landed with you today. I'm Jessica Cherry, and this is She Will Empower. You can catch brand new episodes every Sunday at 11 a.m. Central Standard Time on KWVH 94.3 Wimberley Valley Radio. And of course, you can listen anytime, anywhere on your favorite podcast platform. Just search She Will Empower, and I'll be right there waiting for you. And if you're an early riser or trying to become one, come hang out with me every Tuesday morning from 7 to 9 a.m. on the Wake Up Club on Wimberley Valley Radio. It's cozy, it's fun, it's full of great music and real conversations. And honestly, I think it's one of the best ways to start your morning feeling grounded, connected, and a little more alive. Now, if you're here in Central Texas and your nervous system feels fried, overwhelmed, or like you've been running on fumes for way too long, I would love to see you in person at Lone Star Sound Baths. And you can find me on social media at Lone Star Sound Baths. I guide immersive sound bath experiences designed to help you soften, settle, and truly reset your mind, body, and spirit. It's one of the most healing offerings I provide, and serving our community is something I deeply love. And you can also connect with me through Ladies Lifestyle Network Hayes County, where I host monthly empowerment and networking events all across the Hill Country. These gatherings feature powerful speakers, local nonprofits, incredible women owned businesses, and some truly beautiful venues. Women come into these rooms to grow, to be seen, and to rise together. And I've watched lifelong friendships and game changing business connections form right before my eyes. And if you want a more personal look behind the scenes of motherhood, entrepreneurship, healing, and real life as it unfolds, you can find me over on social media at Life of a Cherry Wife. And if you ever need help with social media and marketing, you can find me on Howdy Social TX. Truly, thank you for being with me today. Thank you for showing up, for doing the work, and for choosing growth, even when it stretches you. And before you go, I want you to do one small thing for your future self, even something tiny, because tiny moves add up. Tiny choices compound, and sometimes that one small decision is the moment that changes everything for your life. Sometimes it's just that one decision, that one small decision that starts the snowball, right? It's just that one thing. I can think of something in my life where it was just like one small decision and it took us on a different path. Tiny moves create big impact, and that big impact could be the confidence boost that you need today. So stay powerful, stay grounded, stay connected, and have the most amazing, beautiful day and week. I will see you next time. Bye.